Okay, get yourself onto your lift and then come into a seated position, a good cross legs. So adjust a little just to make sure that you feel that you're sitting evenly and that the seat bones feel level underneath. Because if you don't feel level, it's very difficult to extend up into the spine with any sense of confidence. So lift up, but see if you can really level out your hips first. Just hold onto your knees and lift and open the chest. Draw your shoulders down away from your ears. Just look at the floor, look at something that's not moving. Soften your jaw, soften your tongue and your throat. Close your eyes, but keep your eyes looking forwards. Keep your eyes still in the sockets. Release your knees, bring your hands into Namaste. Press the palms firmly together, lengthen the armpits into the elbows into the heels of the hands. Focus on taking deep inhalations and deep exhalations. Draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone. And then just gently release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, holding on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area. And then just raise your head, allow your eyes to gently open. Just look forwards, hold on to your knees, lift and open the chest, drive the spine upwards, drawing your shoulders down away from your ears. Take a good deep inhalation in through the nose. And then with the exhalation, turn to the right side. then come back to the center. Hold on to your knees. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose, and then with the exhalation, turn to the left. And then come back to the center. Just come off your lift and then sit back on your heels and wriggle into the inner heels, with bringing the outer buttocks into the inner heels. Lift and open the chest, drawing your shoulders down away from your ears. And then come forwards, hinging at the hips, stretching the arms away, spreading the fingers, squeezing the outer elbows inwards, aiming to work down towards the seat bones. Try and keep the seat bones in contact with your heels. Breathing evenly, deeply. Feeling the two-way stretch. So the stretch down into the seat bones and the stretch into the arms. But also consider and activate the stretch from the knees into the hips, from the knees into the toes. So you activate the legs. Come up onto your knees, turn your toes under, and then come up into Adho Svanasana. Tilting the seat bones up towards the ceiling, straightening the legs, and lifting the seat bones up towards the ceiling. Drawing the trapezius muscle down your back. Just listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, so that the backs of the thighs and the backs of the calves turn outwards. And then lift the seat bones a little more. Draw the abdomen towards the spine. Lift the front chest. Draw the trapezius muscle down the back. So remember, the trapezius muscle covers the shoulder blades. And if you draw the trapezius muscle down, it draws your shoulders away from your ears. But it also, drawing the trapezius muscle downwards, helps you to lift the front chest as well. So every action has a reaction, and the downward action of the trapezius muscle results in the upward action of the sternum bone. Step your feet forwards, just come up into a standing position. And then bring your feet as wide apart as your mat. And then if you're protecting your back, then just bring your hands onto the wall. Otherwise, raise your arms up, extend your arms up to the ceiling. Bring the thumbs into the crease of the elbows and wrap your fingers around your elbows. Consciously turn your toes in a little, especially the big toes. And then hinge at the hips. Come forwards and then hang down. Let the head hang down. Keep the legs dead straight. Again, just consciously turning those big toes inwards, turning the heels outwards, so that you can begin to tadasanaise your legs, turning the shins inwards, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards. And again, the reaction of that action of turning the fronts of the legs inwards is that the backs of the legs broaden outwards. When you start to connect with that that back leg action, the broadening of the backs of the legs, then you get more space in your hips. You get more space and length in the spine. Just breathe evenly. Turn the fronts of the thighs in so that you feel the backs of the thighs broaden out. Remember lifting the kneecaps, lifting the thigh muscle all the way up into the hip socket. So the more you work your legs, the more you can release into the spine. Okay, and then just bring your hands down onto the floor in half-uttanasana. Just bring in the fingertips down onto the floor, projecting the chin and the chest forwards. Use blocks under your hands if it makes you bend your knees. Continue to turn the fronts of the thighs in, feeling that the backs of the thighs broaden outwards. Lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, projecting the chin and the chest forwards. And then walk your hands towards the end of the mat, bring your hands shoulder width apart, bring your feet hip width apart, and then step back into dog down. Maintaining straight legs if you can. Turn the fronts of the legs inwards so that the backs of the legs broaden outwards. Lift the seat bones. And then step your feet forwards, come up into standing position, and then come up into Tadasana. So we've got this action of turning the legs inwards, and we've got also that process of observation and activation, and those kind of cycle. So just stand in Tadasana with the inner edge of the feet together, spreading the toes, and then turn the fronts of the legs inwards. And then see if you feel that the backs of the legs broaden outwards. And then rather than letting the backs of the legs broaden outwards be the reaction, and kind of as a result of reaction, it becomes the passive action. Can you make that the determined action even? I think I just made that other word up. Tuck the tailbone in without disturbing your legs. Turn the fronts of the thighs, feel the backs of the thighs broaden outwards, and then really consciously turn the backs of the thighs outwards and tuck the tailbone in. Up into the chest, draw the trapezius muscle down the back, and then lift and open the chest. Breathe evenly. Breathe deeply. Soften the jaw. Really consider the rotation of the legs. So observe that passive action of the backs of the thighs that happens as a result of the conscious action of turning the fronts of the thighs. But then turn that passive action into an active action. Notice that you get more space to tuck the tailbone into. Breathe evenly. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then step or jump your feet apart. Turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out, and then face the front. Now in trikonasana, your legs turn differently. So we, rather than turn the legs inwards, turn the legs outwards. So all of the poses where our legs are wide and we're kind of facing towards the front, that's how the action of the legs work. Where we kind of turn all the way around, then we tadasanize the legs, we turn the legs in. But where we keep the chest at the front. So for virasana 2, for parsvottanasana, it's outside. So turn those thighs outwards. This one's quite easy to do independently. That one's quite easy to do independently. Quite hard to do together. So just see if you can feel that the legs open in this kind of open direction, so that the pelvic region really broadens open. It brings weight onto the outside edge of the foot on both sides, so you can broaden out and stretch towards the little toe side on both legs, and then that hip over to the left shoulder, and then come over into trikonasana. So in trikonasana, it's easy at this stage to definitely lose this back leg, isn't it? Quite easy to continue to focus on this leg because it wants to continue to turn, but keep this thigh turning outwards as well. So the backs of the thighs broaden inwards. They turn inwards. Turn the chest and then raise the arm up. Breathe evenly. So maybe consciously turn the backs of the thighs in from the little toe side to the big toe side. So the fronts of the thighs can broaden. Reach up, come back to the center, and then swap your feet around. Turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. Remember, with these wide leg poses, you can always bring this front foot forwards if you've got stiffness in your hips. So if you bring the front foot forwards, and maybe you can go a little bit wider. So just feel that these legs can turn outwards. So it's where the fronts of the legs broaden and the back of the thigh, which again happens to be the kind of passive action here. You can really consciously turn that passive action into an active action. So turn the outer thighs, the front thighs out, and then turn the back of the thigh, turn it in. Just from greater solidity of the leg. For better connection with the floor, with the feet. So really activate the back of the thigh, turning it inwards on both sides. So every action has a reaction, has an action, has a reaction, has an action, has a reaction. And then come back to the center, bring your feet parallel, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump your feet back together. And then come back into Tadasana. Just breathe evenly, deeply, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, turning the backs of the thighs outwards. So observe the active action and observe the passive action, and turn it on its head. So if you really consciously in Tadasana, rather than thinking turning the thighs inwards, turning the thighs outwards, it gives you all of this extra space in the tailbone to turn. Just get some blocks for your hands and do parsvottanasana. So Kat, I know you don't really like this pose, but maybe you'll like it a bit better in when you kind of concentrate on the legs in this way. So lift and open the chest. Bring your arms out nice and wide, and then step or jump your feet apart, and then turn your left toes in really steeply, and then rotate the front leg all the way out. Now at first, it feels okay to turn the leg outwards, like this front leg anyway, because it feels like you're kind of doing trikonasana leg, but it actually needs to turn inwards, so that front of the thigh turns inwards. And of course, the back of the thigh needs to turn inwards as well, so that the back of the front of the thigh turns inwards, so that the back of the thigh broadens outwards. But again, we often leave that to passivity, to relying on the front of the thigh to turn the back of the thigh outwards. So perhaps think about turning the fronts of the thighs in and the backs of the thighs out on both legs, on the front leg as well as the back leg. So turn the back of the thigh out, broaden from the big toe side to the little toe side, and then that brings the hip with it. Lift up into the chest and then come forward, really focusing on the backs of the thighs, broadening the backs of the thighs outwards. Maybe it's the front leg that feels kind of unusual, because maybe we don't really spend a lot of time focusing on that front leg. We focus often on the back leg, because that is the back leg that kind of makes the hips go level. But everyone's hips look really quite level there. So keep turning the backs of the thighs outwards so that the fronts of the thighs turn in. Extend, lift the tailbone up towards the ceiling. Extend the chest forwards. Breathe in evenly. So just have the hands underneath your shoulders. Don't try to stretch the hands forwards too much. If you can go down a little lower, come down a little lower. If you come down all the way to the floor, then do. So again, the difference in these poses where we come over the leg is that you turn the legs in the opposite direction. You tadasanarize the legs, and the heels are in line with each other rather than heel on instep. So keep turning the back of the thigh of both legs, especially that front leg. Keep projecting the chin and the chest forwards. Breathing evenly and deeply, lengthening the spine away from the leg. Keep the head lifted. Keep the head lifted. Keep the legs straight. Okay, and then bend that front leg. Step in with the back leg, and then come back into Tadasana. Just get the blocks and put them on the other end of your mat, and then come into Tadasana. Just lift and open the chest. Just use your breath to stabilize your energy. Turn the fronts of the legs in, turn the backs of the legs out. Tuck the tailbone in, lift up into the chest, draw the trapezius muscle down the back. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards your chest, and then step nice and wide with your legs. Turn your right toes in really steeply, and then rotate on the other leg. And then make sure that you turn. Often you have to pick up that heel as you turn and bring the foot out more acutely, so that you really do get this turn of the front thigh, the broadening of the back thigh, the broadening of the back thigh, and the turning of the front thigh. And do that with both legs, so that both thighs, the fronts of the thighs turn in, the backs of the thighs broaden out. And then hinge at the hips. Come forwards. And then find the blocks. So you don't need to come down onto the blocks. You can go straight down onto the floor. But sometimes going straight into the full or the kind of going all the way down to the floor kind of makes you lose the actions of the legs, makes you lose the action of the spine. So just try and really activate those actions. Breathe evenly, deeply listening to the sound of the breath, turning the legs. If you can go down a little lower, then do, but don't lose the legs. Don't lose the spine. If you can find the floor and come down, but keep the legs turning, keep the chest extending away, keep the back straight. Breathe evenly. And then bend the front leg, step forward, and then come up into a standing position. And then lift and open the chest. Come back into Tadasana. Just breathe. Stretch your arms forwards, interlock your fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then raise your arms over your head. Work from the feet, lifting out of the feet, into the legs, rotating the legs, tucking the tailbone in, drawing the abdomen towards the spine, drawing the trapezius muscle down the back so that you can really lift the chest. Just release your arms, swap the interlock of the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then raise your arms. And then just release your arms down. Just come down onto all fours, bring your hands shoulder width apart, spread the fingers, step back, turn your toes under, and then come back up into Adho Svanasana, turning the fronts of the legs in, broadening the backs of the thighs and the backs of the calves out, and then consciously turning the backs of the thighs so that the fronts of the thighs turn in. So sometimes it can feel unusual to change the focus of the pose, but then you always find something different. So when you really turn those thighs, maybe you find that actually the chest lifts better, your arms feel freer, your shoulders feel a little freer. And then come down onto your knees and then just sit back on your heels for a moment. Just sitting back on your heels, just observing the energy that you have released around the shoulders, around the arms, the energy in the chest, and the lightness of the legs, even though you're sitting back on them. And then come down into supta baddhakonasana. If you want to, rather than supta baddhakonasana, you can do headstand if you feel like you're up to it. Otherwise, bring the soles of the feet together, knees apart, have a blanket underneath your head if you can, if your head rolls back. So in shashastra, in headstand, that action of the legs is particularly potent. So when you come up into a headstand, then you can really again tadasanalize those legs, turning the thighs inwards, broadening the thighs outwards, and then really consciously broadening the thighs outwards. It brings real lightness in the hips. So reversing the focus, turning the backs of the thighs outwards so that the fronts of the thighs turn in rather than the other way around. It's the same action, of course, but just a different sense of focus. Just use your supta baddhakonasana just to open up the front of the body. You really broaden the hips, broaden the chest. So broadening is a useful focus. Okay, if you in headstand, then just gently bring yourself down. In supta baddhakonasana, just gently draw your knees together, having the knees together, the feet apart. If you come out of your headstand, then just do adho virasana, just to stretch out the back. If there's any discomfort in your neck, come up onto the fingertips with your hands, just stretching out of your headstand, out of adho virasana. And then if you're in supta baddhakonasana, just have a little, pull your knees towards your chest, have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, and then just come up into a seated position. And then come up into cross legs. So hold onto your knees, lift and open the chest, drawing the trapezius muscle down your back. So observe in cross legs, sometimes we need a little bit of lift with a cushion or a folded blanket, but sitting in cross legs, often we find that we can lift the chest pretty successfully. And if you can't, then you sit on like a folded blanket or a block. Lift the chest high, draw the shoulders down. And then we're going to bring the legs wide, but just observe the lift of the chest first. In fact, we're going to do a couple of variations before we do that. Just sit in virasana. So traditional virasana is where you have the knees together and then you sit between the feet. Now, many of us, myself included, can't sit all the way down on the floor. So I'm going to put a block long ways so that I can just sit back on the block. So you might need that. So knees together, feet apart, and then observe how much you can lift and open the chest. So even more so than in cross legs often, there's a better sense of openness and lift in the chest. So just stretch your arms forwards, interlock the fingers, and then raise your arms over your head. Feel how much you can really elevate the spine out of the hips. And then release your arms. Just feel how you can really lift and elevate the spine upwards, like there's a lightness to the chest. And then just come forwards, and then move the block if you were sitting on it, and come back into cross legs. And then if you're sitting directly on the floor, then observe you can lift the chest, but not as freely as you could perhaps in virasana. So sometimes it's useful to then just sit on a folded blanket, just to put a folded blanket underneath your hips. I know it's a lot of messing about, but it's just useful to just feel the difference in just the upper body elevation. So breathe evenly. Just feeling the lift of the chest. And then we're going to bring the legs wide for upavistha konasana. So uncross your legs, and then at first just do it without a blanket underneath your hips. Bring the legs nice and wide as they'll go. And then turn the thighs. Really activate the legs, tighten the kneecaps. Turn the thighs inwards, broadening the backs of the legs outwards. And then lift the chest. Now maybe if you're sitting directly on the floor, lifting the spine is a bit of a challenge. And raising your arms over your head is a bit of a challenge, because it makes you want to kind of roll onto the back edge of the seat bones, and it's better to try and stay on the front edge of the seat bones. So just release, and then get your folded blanket, and then sometimes we just sit on the corner edge of the blanket, but I want you to sit just both seat bones on the blanket. So just see if you can just sit yourself on the blanket, have both seat bones on the blanket, and then bring your legs apart. And then perhaps you notice, well, actually it's much easier to come onto the front edge of the seat bone. And if you bring your hands to the sides of the hips, it's also a little more easy to lift the spine upwards. So tadasana-rise these legs, turn the thighs inwards, turn the shins inwards, feel that the backs of the thighs, in fact, get hold of the back of the thigh and broaden it from the big toe side to the little toe side. Broaden the back of the thigh outwards. So not that way, Andrew. So reach around the back of your leg, so you can see your fingers underneath your inner thigh, and then turn them outwards. So kind of stretch the back of the thigh outwards. And so that turn there facilitates this turn here, this kind of front thigh turning inwards. Turn the knees inwards, turn the shins inwards. So the toes should point directly to the ceiling, and then lift up into the chest. Stretch your arms forwards, interlock the fingers incorrectly, because we did the correct way earlier on. Turn the palms all the way out, and then raise your head. Raise your arms even. Breathe deeply. Lengthen the spine up towards the ceiling. Keep turning the thighs. And then release your arms. Just turn the body to the torso to the right leg. Rotating the abdomen from the left to the right. Observe what happens with this leg. So keep that leg firmly in Tadasana. Turn in and then bring your hand onto the outside of the thigh if you can reach it, and then turn. Parsva upavistha konasana. And then come back to the center and then turn to the other side, to the left. Observe as you turn, does your left seat bone become heavier than your right seat bone? Try and keep it even. Keep tadasanaizing those legs, so turning the thighs, especially that back leg. So the leg that you can't see is often the leg that goes astray. Come back to the center, then get hold of the back of the knee, and then bring the feet into baddhakonasana. So sitting on the blanket, hold onto the shins, or if you can, reach without it. I always find holding onto the big toes makes me kind of drop a little bit here. And although I try to kind of fight against that, I find more space holding onto the shins. So just find where you can just find that front chest lift. Draw the trapezius muscle down. Breathing evenly. So just like the turn in the legs, if we let the inner legs kind of stretch out into the knees, then the outer legs stretch from the knees into the body, into the feet, into the hips. So feel that you can really lengthen the inner legs to the knees, to the inner knees, and then rotate the inner knees to the outer knees, and the outer knees in towards the body. So again, we often just focus on one side, on the front or on the back. But when we can integrate the anterior and the posterior, then our extension becomes deeper. Okay, and release. Just bring your knees in and then stretch your legs out, and then just come down onto your back and get your block and come into setubandha. If you're not doing setubandha today, you can do viparita karani, just stretching your legs upwards. You can always put a block underneath your seat bones if there's discomfort in the legs, in lifting the legs. Otherwise, put the block in the sacrum area of your back. Hold on to the edges of the mat and turn the crease of the elbows up to face the ceiling and out to the sides of the room. At the same time, think of the point of the elbow and turn that into the body and up to the ceiling. And then if you can, straighten your legs, working to tadasanaize the legs. But not just thinking about the fronts of the thighs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards. Think about turning the backs of the thighs outwards. Breathing evenly and deeply. Just listening to the sound of the breath. Working from the anterior, which is the front of the legs, and the back. Anterior, posterior. Okay, and then bend your knees to lift the seat bones, remove the block, and then just bring yourself down onto the floor, pull your knees into your chest, and just have a little gentle massage on the spine. Oh, Geoff, you're standing on my computer. Sorry, everyone. Come down. Have some water if you want it. There you go. He was trying to get my glass there. Okay, and then just get yourself ready for shavasana. So, just have a blanket for your head. Just move your equipment out of the way so that you can just stretch out. And then have the blanket for underneath your neck and your head. Just make sure you're in a really good straight line. And then just release into the floor. It's nice to take your glasses off if you can, if you're wearing them. And then just allow your body to just gently relax. Just soften into the floor. Just listen to the sound of the breath. And allow the out breath to just release. Unhook the muscles of the arms and of the legs so that the body becomes lighter yet heavier. So you really let go in the muscles so that the body can relax. Allow the body to become heavy on the floor so that you begin to observe the sensation of your energy that rises to the top of the skin. So it stays contained within the physical body, but rises up to the top of the upper facing skin. And then using your breath, inflate the body to the tips of the toes, the tips of the fingers, the top of the head, with that deep energy. Not just the front of the body, but fill in the back of the body as well. basking in the glow of positive energy. When you're ready, just wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, just bringing yourself back into this pose of Shavasana. And then bend your knees, draw your knees in towards chest, and then rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just a gentle grounding massage on your spine. And then gently roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out the top leg. Come back up into the seated position. Just into a final cross legs with your hands in Namaste. Just a final spinal lift. Draw your breath in through the nose and down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you've released through your practice this morning, that good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions, the forward bends, the twists, the reclining poses bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to seek to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then release the backs of your hands down towards your knees as you raise your head and allow your eyes to gently open. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel as though you have just lifted your energy a little and just maybe adjusted the way that you think about the front and the back. So just consider how they come together. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great